I figured it out.
Well, I'm not going to ask you. Christian's so cute so much. He says to me, "Did you upgrade to what legroom? I want to make sure we don't charge your prices." I'm like, "It's not going to be a problem."
So that's what you like, right?
And that's doing it through your.
Yeah.
Damn, you're good.
And we got the video. See my hand?
Right. Oh, so it's on
We'll
a
have
slight
to edit
delay.
it. We'll have to edit it later.
Oh, so there's a slight delay then.
Yeah, like a few seconds away.
That's cool.
I hope the
This
video.
fun.
All right, now I can relax.
This will be fun. I'll start rounding people up in a minute.
All right. It's so cute.
Different styles right past. And maybe she's used to clients who are real sticklers, but these guys are. I know, like, this is the clearing of the throat. So start slaughtering your way, get your drinks, use the loo, whatever. Instead, work your way on over here, okay, please? You go back.
We're live streaming.
For
On YouTube.
broadcasting, I guess.
Yes. Hopefully we can edit it later.
Somewhat of a long story.
I noticed that too. I like layering of the smoke, layering of the smoke. When you are water, let me make sure that actually you don't because I get lots of stuff there. You're good. Very into there, I guess. I haven't.
Yeah.
Sort of.
It's extra time.
I think we're getting close. We've got about 60% in a 6. But one of the important ones you need to see is the panelists. Yeah, I got one for you. You give me the tap water. I just told them next time we get a bottle of water. Yeah. So we had to pour it on 3 hours. Ron Mazursky, please take a seat. Well, we ran out of water. I'm very sorry, but that seems like beer. So,
Wine too.
right. Okay, so keep an eye on it, all right? We have a small knot of people who are provisioning so they can come sit down. So get your provisions and sit down, please. Yana, I'm talking about you. Okay, Russell. Dogan. So hi guys. Now, I'm David Crew, and this is a NYPAY event. So how many of you have been to a NYPAY? How many of you haven't been to a NYPAY event before? Okay. NYPAY was started long 2006 and kind of kicked into real gear. It worked for a while when payments were sort of status quo, issue cards, all that kind of stuff. And it really kicked up a lot after 2008. This organization sort of morphed into more frequent events in 2010, 2011, and we do about 8 or 10 a year. And one of the characteristics of the NYPAY event is that we want questions coming back and forth. Some of the best ones are when there's a good conversation. In fact, when we had an E&V discussion just after that happened, it was almost a fist fight. So it was a great event. We had a merchant, we had someone here. So keep that in mind. Please feel free if something occurs to you or you want to raise a question, just put your hand up. The acoustics are good here. I don't think we need a mic. And start talking, because that's what we try to replicate at these events are those conversations you fall into at big conferences where you meet a lot of people and have a good talk. And this isn't exactly the same, but we try to have a small enough group that we can talk and have a good discussion and come away thinking, wow, I hadn't thought of that before, which isn't always the case when you listen to panel discussions. So, I'm David True. I want to thank partners here. C2G Partners, stand up. So, a couple words here. They graciously are sponsoring this event, and a few words.
Great. Well, thanks, David. So, yeah, we're very happy to sponsor the event. It's my first time attending the event, so it seems like a great event to be at. And I've been with C2G Partners for about a year. I'm celebrating my 1-year anniversary. So, ladies haven't killed me or kicked me out yet, so that's a good sign. And I've joined Sandy and Peggy, who most of you know, I spoke about. They've been at it for kind of 15 years, and been coming here, they said, for the last 8 to 10 years. So it's good stuff. So a little bit about C2G. We're about a 100-person firm. We focus primarily in 3 industries: Fiserv, healthcare, and telecom. And in Fiserv, we have a particular expertise in payments. I don't have that expertise, but Sandy tells me it's all about how do I get my money. So I'll listen to that discussion here today. And like 2 kind of core areas for us are our consultants, some of which are here today, and many of you have worked with them. So we've got a great bench of consultants that kind of help out in the space. And a lot of great stuff in the Fiserv and marketing consulting. And earlier this year, we fired up a data science group, and they focus on using data, technology, and analytics to drive marketing performance, and are in the midst of launching their digital practice. And Ozgur Dogan, who will be speaking to you guys later today, is kind of heading both of those areas up for us. So if you find yourself in any need for some consultants or data science help, give us a call and we'll keep you in help.
I'm glad you came to the table. I'll pitch NYPAY. So the other thing I want to thank is David Fletcher, who has provided this. They have been tremendously helpful over the years in providing good space for the events. Lynn Loker, who's the head of the whole New York office, could not be here tonight. She's an opera fan, and so that's an opera night. It's all the opera. But they're wonderful, wonderful folks. They have an incredibly strong payments practice. And if you continue to attend NYPAY events, which I hope you will probably find a good number of them at this space. So, to the content of the event. This event is about what's happening in commerce, in retail commerce, brick and mortar, and digital. And we all know the mix is changing. So, one thing I was going to ask is, how many of you guys have started? I'm supposed to have notes of it, they didn't actually show up, so I have to go from memory. How many of you guys have actually started transactions on your phone and then completed them either at your computer or someplace else? And that's a lot. How many of you guys do most of your buying online? That's this crowd. So things are changing dramatically. And retail isn't going anywhere. We all love to buy stuff. This is America. But the way it is bought is changing. And the way it's delivered is changing. So this is just a number. It's a stat that you've got to throw up a couple numbers. It's just the rate of growth. This was 2017, or 2016, actually, I mistyped that. About 3.8% sales overall. But the portion of that was either digital, you can see on the mobile side it was 17.5% year over year, and 13.5% for just e-commerce. That's a big change. And there are retailers like Bonobos or things like that started digitally and kind of went to physical. That's another conversation which could come up today. But there's a lot of the brick and mortar ones, and we've seen, I mean, Toys R Us and the rest that are being challenged. And the quote that I found really good, and I'll probably leave this up on the screen, is one from the guy from Bonobos, and you can read it, but I love it. Retail spent the past century organizing around the automobile. We'll spend the next 100 years re-urbanizing with smartphones and internet as the primary means of engagement. So you could just quibble with some pieces of it, but I think that's a nice way to sum up what we're starting to see here. And I've had the very, very good fortune to have three experts and people who've seen this from different perspectives and can talk about it tonight. And I'll let them do kind of a quick kind of intro to what they want to say about it, about themselves, and then we'll get into some questions. So we got Laura McKenzie from Mastercard, from C2G Partners, and Chris, and Chris, yeah. So I've known a lot of these people. In fact, Laura, I didn't actually bump into a Mastercard too when I was there, and Chris, I've known him for a while now. So, and it's what I found out after putting the panel together is that Chris and Laura worked together in the past. So
Partners in crime.
They're going to be getting up. So anyway, that kind of brings us to the actual topic, the actual meat of this. I'll leave the stuff that we talked through. And so I want to start off by thinking, as we go through this world, but first, the little pitch, you guys can talk a bit about yourselves. Just tell me a bit about you guys and what you do. Laura?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Laura McKenzie. I'm with Mastercard. I'm the Senior Vice President in charge of all of our core merchant vertical relationships in the U.S., which includes fuel, travel, retail, drug and grocery, and restaurants. I've been with Mastercard for going on 14 years, and I did not start in the financial services business. I started my career on 7th Avenue in the fashion business and spent a long time with folks like Ralph Lauren and Leanne Klein, and then in a very circuitous, non-linear route sort of made my way to financial services with the foundational background of having worked for and with the merchants, a whole host of merchants that no longer exist, like Marshall Fields and Magnum and Lazarus, and just a world of people who were swallowed up by Macy's and Federated. Really understanding the merchant need, the merchant calendar, the speed at which they operate, and the fact that they are actually in business to sell something, whatever it is that they sell. So payments should not be the driving element of what they're focused on, but it has very much become a big part. So it's been a great journey, and I'm pleased to be here, and I'm exceptionally pleased to find that at least half the people in the room either have worked for, do work with, used to work with. So very nice to have a friend in the audience.
All right, it's my turn.
The data is a part of everything we're going to be doing, so tell us about it.
Yes. I'm Ozgur Dogan. I head up the solutions area for C2G Partners. And basically, what we do is kind of put together the analytics, data science, and digital technologies to deliver solutions for our clients. We're with the company for about a year. Prior to that, I was the CMO of a leading e-commerce company overseas for Exbrada. And actually, as we kind of talk about this change and migration, I was on the receiving end. So I was actually, this change is happening, we're taking share from the brick and mortar. So I kind of went through the whole transition process and also led the mobile growth as well as sort of the development of the digital wallet solution for Exbrada. So very excited to be here and definitely look forward to the conversation.
And evening, everybody. My name is Chris August. I lead a fintech startup out of Dallas called vPromos that's in the card-linked offer space. And we'll talk a little bit about what card-linked offers are. But essentially, the notion of a card-linked offer is taking a payment card or another form factor that's present today. It could be an EMV card, could be contactless, Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatnot, and connecting payment credentials with some other element or pieces of data that are meaningful to either the merchant or the consumer, or ideally both. So I've actually been in the card-linked space really since its inception for about 10 years. Laura and I actually worked together at Mastercard along with some other folks in the room here to build Mastercard's first generation of card-linked offers in a program called Mastercard Easy Savings. And this was a program, and it still is actually in production today in the US, the UK, Asia Pacific, a number of other regions, that enables Mastercard cardholders to automatically save by simply registering their card one time. They earn automatic discounts delivered through statement rebates with a variety of merchants that Mastercard has partnered with to promote their goods and services to the cardholder community. That capability has been around for about 10 years. Relatively quickly, though, after card-linked offers originated about 10 or so years ago, they've morphed into, instead of just a channel for earning standing discounts, they've become a means for retailers, both small businesses as well as larger tier 1 and tier 2 retailers, to connect their customers to their points of sale in a way that lets the retailer know something about who that customer is when they come in their door and when they come to their point of sale to pay. It may be a customer that qualifies for some special status with that retailer. They may have an offer or reward accrued to their account that can be automatically redeemed at the point of sale. And basically, this notion of payment-linked offers is allowing smart, at least, bricks and mortar merchants to try and close some of the gap, the knowledge gap that they have when a consumer comes through their door. If you're online, courtesy of Cookie, the online site that you may be visiting or revisiting knows a lot about you. If you walk into a traditional bricks and mortar environment, the typical retailer is not going to know you, even if you've been there 100 times in the past. But when you can connect the payment card credentials with the identity of the consumer, you gain an enormous amount of data that allows the bricks and mortar retailer to close the gap in terms of knowledge and experience delivery relative to online players. So I'm going to be talking today particularly from the perspective of how both small merchants as well as large tier 1 and tier 2 merchants are using these capabilities to try and gain an upper leg on the Amazons of the world.
Well, I'll put a word on the table that we'll come back to later, which is tokenization, because you immediately made me think of that, but we'll revisit that. I want to start the conversation off because each of us have looked at it from different perspectives. And Laura, you work with the larger merchants, right? The key merchants. So some more stories, some sort of things that you've seen people doing as this change takes place, because I'm sure you've seen that in some of your customers and clients.
Yeah, no, so just to give a sense, we, from a managed merchant relationship, have direct relationships with really no more than about 250 largest merchants in the U.S. across all 5 verticals. So it's really only about, on average, this sort of top 50 players in the fuel space, the retail space, the drug and grocery space. So you sort of get the idea of who I deal with. And each and every one of them, right, has been working to figure out how to create themselves in a multi-channel and omni-channel environment, and with an understanding that the pure plays are eating their lunch, have been eating their lunch. But what we really see and know and firmly believe in is, retail, brick and mortar retail is anything but dead. It absolutely is still, people still prefer to try things on, to go into a store, to have the social experience with it. And, the numbers all prove that out. So for all of the years that e-commerce has been out there and the double-digit growth that it's having, it's still no more than about 11% of our overall commerce. So, when over 80% of all commerce in the country and really around the globe is still done in a brick and mortar environment, right, it's not going away. But they're trying to figure out how to effectively be that offering that gives their customers, who now know that they have the option to buy what they want, where they want, when they want, how they want, in any combination of research it on your phone, go home to your tablet, sit with your kids in bed at night. If you can't find it, go into the store, try it on, go back. If they don't have the right color, go back and go online. So, we've all been there, right? We've all tried to buy things in a store and they don't have the one you want. And then you go find it either at their store online, or you find it at another store and they ship it right to you. So everybody that's shopping knows that you can get whatever you want ultimately, and however you want. And those combinations are really challenging. So, but brick and mortar is not going away. Clearly in this year, we've all been hurting. More than 1,100 stores have closed in this year alone. And Toys R Us declared bankruptcy last year again, last week. Time is morphing. Again, there are real pain points that my customers are really seeing and feeling, and they're trying to figure it out. And with Toys, literally, I haven't spoken to them 2 days ago. Their story or their belief is they're not going anywhere, right? They're just they're reconfiguring, right? They're taking a step back and sorting it all out to figure out how to go forward, and which I fundamentally believe. But everybody's got to figure out what are the solutions. How do they give their customers what it is that they want? And you mentioned bundles, and Jet has been mentioned, and Walmart, obviously, they 5 years ago or 7 years ago, and I'm getting old, I've been doing this too long. They, when Mike Duke was still there, but they went very publicly at their earnings and said, we've set a goal to grow our e-commerce, 5 times, and be up in competitor of Amazon's, even though that's our focus. And of course, year 1 came and they didn't really make any progress, and year 2 came and they didn't, they moved it, a couple of percentage points, and year 3 and 4. And they finally have gone on an acquisition spree, right? They've really been very thoughtful in looking out across the market, understanding their customers, right? What does our customer want? What is Amazon giving the customer? And then going to look and see who in the market has the skills and capabilities that will help them. So the acquisition of Handy, and the acquisition of Jet, and the acquisition of Bongos, and just yesterday they announced the acquisition of a logistics company in New York that can help them deliver door to door in New York City. But I think the acquisition.
I didn't see that. That's sense.
Yeah, the acquisition, and they only paid $10 million for it, so it's jump ship. So they reached into their back pocket. But the acquisition of Jet really has been a game changer, because with Jet, they've got Mark Lowe, who has a fundamentally different understanding and ability to sort of see the space from the big behemoth. Walmart has 2 million employees around the globe, so they have to work in different. But for me personally, the unique pricing capabilities and the algorithms that Jet has brought them enables them to really be a game changer in the marketplace. And so they're starting to really see that growth escalating on a much more rapid scale against Big A than they have in all of these.
I'll have to keep that in mind. That's a good one.
But so everybody out there is doing it. We've been very excited and very proud. Just last week, we actually launched a pilot program down in Soho in partnership with NYPAY and with Neiman Marcus. We opened a pop-up store down in Soho. It's only open for about 8 weeks through the middle of October, but it is completely based around, Mastercard has really gone into working using our technology and our background and payments to rethink retail and help our customers actually reimagine what the retail experience looks like in a brick and mortar world. So for any of you who want to go down to Worcester Street, it is really fabulous. It's very small space with curated product by Neiman Marcus.
I think you should talk more into the microphone.
Oh, can you not hear?
Well, I can hear because I'm
We're trying to stream it, and so
okay.
I can hear you.
Is that better?
just scoot the chair forward. There you go.
There you go.
Sorry to interrupt
Thank you
you.
for the booming voice.
Thank you. Anyway, the store has a very select assortment of product curated by Neiman Marcus, but it all revolves around a smart mirror. So when you go into the dressing room and you take a skirt or a dress or a pair of sunglasses and try them on in the dressing room, each SKU in the store, the tag is outfitted with an RFID tag, and the technology built into the mirror recognizes every single piece of merchandise that you've walked into the fitting room with, and all of a sudden that item shows up on the mirror, and you can tap it, and it will then show you what other colors are available. If the size that you tried on is not the right size for you and you want to know if they have an 8 or a 10 or a 4, they're in, you tap on it and it will show you. It will also, if you picked a red skirt, it will pop up and say, you want something else to go with it, and the black top and the white top and a matching belt will show up. And if you're interested, you actually can just tap on the mirror and purchase through MasterPass, of course, our digital wallet, right there on the screen, and have bought it before you ever leave the fitting room, and then you just leave the store. And in addition to that, the front window on the street of the store has been built with the same technology. So if once the store closes at 6, 7 p.m., and you're window shopping and you're walking down, you just had a nice dinner and you had your bottle of wine, and you see I'm getting to know the audience, I think, very quickly. You see something that you address that you really like, and you're from out of town and you're not going to be down in Soho again, and you're going to really love it. Tap on the window and there is a rotating catalog that actually pops up, and you tap on the items that you like and you can actually buy it straight through the window. When you send it to your cart, it asks if you'd like to check out. You input your phone number, and just to keep it, we actually agonize for a long time. Do we ask people for their email, for their phone? If you're standing on a street corner in Manhattan, what's too private? What information are you willing to put in? And what's anybody going to do if they know your cell phone number? Who cares? But the minute you put that in and hit checkout, you instantaneously get a text to your phone that actually sends the cart to you. And you can then, with MasterPass, actually make the purchase. You can make it then, you can go home tomorrow and think about it. You can wait 24 hours, you can wait 4 days, but you then can actually make the purchase when the store is closed and you never see it again. So that's how we are working with our customers and our partners and leveraging the technology and the assets and the third parties that we partner with to reimagine what the experience in a brick and mortar environment can be, and how we leverage payment and what's happening with the digitization of payment to make that happen. And you brought up a word earlier, and tokenization. So for us, it's absolutely fundamentally about safety and security.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So,
I think for everybody here.
So in everything that I just described, that transaction is not as safe and secure as it must be, then it's not going to work for anybody. So tokenization is standing behind it. The digital wallet standing behind it, the safety and security, if you're going to stand on a street corner and help enable a transaction, you have to be certain that you're protected and you're safe. So.
Well, a couple of things that make me think of just comment. One is the notion that I think many of us share is that payments ultimately disappear into what you're going to do. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to go pay. They want to go do something that requires payment at the end of it. And that's a good example of that. There's a standards question, but I'm not going to go there right now because clearly a big part of this has to do with looking at data and figuring it out. That's why I want to pitch it over to Ozgur.
Yeah, so, a couple of things, and actually, just to kind of add to what Laura said, it's not really about physical or digital, right? So the reality is the consumer actually lives in an omni-channel world, right? And the experience really kind of may start in digital and then goes to physical and then they go back to digital, right? So the key is to kind of understand those patterns, but there is some research that was done recently. About 85% of all the consumers that actually make a purchase in a physical retail store, they start their journey on the mobile platform, right? Looking at their smartphones and looking at, doing the research and actually browsing it, or going to Google or Amazon and really learning about the product before they actually walk into the store. So understanding this whole omni-channel experience and journey is really critical. The other thing that I want to mention is and again, this is something that we observed really closely at Subrata. So from 2014 to 2017, within that 3-year period, the number of visits increased from 40 million to 80 million, right? So we basically doubled, yes, in 3 years. And when we broke it down, desktop versus mobile, what we saw is desktop was actually flat, right? And mobile traffic increased by 8 times over that 3-year period, right? The revenue increased 9 times during that period. So mobile is a huge driving force right now for retail. I know we sort of talk about digital e-commerce versus, but it's also important to kind of understand and break it down and really understand the experience specifically to the mobile channel. So actually mobile right now, specifically the smartphones, is the fastest growing segment of e-commerce. Last year it grew by 50%. This year it's supposed to grow around 35% in the US. And so from a merchant or retailer perspective, yes, go ahead.
The question supporting that data point. Could you talk about the number of retailers in the US who have optimized their mobile sites during those 3 years that simply weren't before? Does the technology have something to do with it? And if that doesn't fit with your story, talk about it later.
No, it actually.
Payment's very accommodating.
Thanks for the question. I mean, that's exactly, and so the 8 times growth, right, over a 3-year period in traffic or 9 times growth in revenue. Certainly, one of it was, yes, a lot more users are using mobile to access the website, but at the same time, we also made a lot of investments in building out our mobile capabilities, right? So developing a responsive site, right, which is basically mobile optimized. And today, as you kind of look at a lot of these sites, they're not necessarily optimized for the mobile phones, right? So a lot of retailers embrace that, and they kind of invested in that area, but some of them have not, right? So that's one area. The other area is really mobile apps, right? So when we talk about mobile worlds, sort of site and app, there are really 2 sides to the coin, and reality is we need to be strong in both sides, right? Some of us use went to Amazon.com through our mobile phones. Some of the people that they went to their app, right, because they get a better experience there. But so the investment in technology is critical. The other piece that with mobile is, if you look at it from a conversion perspective, right? So out of all the traffic that goes to a website, Desktop today still converts, 2 to 3 times higher than mobile, right?
Well, what's the research showing? Is that it's a more awkward experience, checkout experience on mobile?
Yeah, a couple different reasons. We actually we measured, right? So it's broader. We kind of looked at our purchase funnel, conversion funnel, and we measured the amount of time it takes for a user to enter their address information on a desktop versus a mobile smartphone, right? So it takes about 50% more time, longer time, to enter the information field on a smartphone, right? It's just harder, right? Smaller screen and so
Stuart
forth.
Laura would probably say vegetables.
Right.
Exactly right.
Your browser may have that information memorized on your desktop, but Safari or whatever you may be using on Android doesn't have that capability.
Exactly. So then the question becomes, how do you take that friction out of their experience, right? How do you make it faster for the user to actually enter their information or easier? So things like auto fill for address fields or Masterpass, right? Using digital wallets or one-click pay that Amazon has. Those things definitely speed up the process, right, and really increase that conversion rate. But still, there's a gap, right, between mobile and desktop. So just to kind of, I guess sum it up, I see mobile is a big sort of driving force here in digital and retail, and that's really kind of driving a lot of the transformation that we're seeing, and also requiring, in a way, to understand that omni-channel behavior and omni-channel journey.
Oh, we got a question.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, questions are good.
So I think to your point, to make it very easy and simple, they can use Apple Pay and Amazon Pay, etc. Do you see that retailers resist that because they don't get the data, right? Once you have hand over to somebody else, you don't know the customer that well. What are some of the challenges?
Yeah, they do resist that for sure, right? So but kind of reality is building a wallet solution, right, from scratch for a retailer is a lot of work, right? Really sort of replicating or even coming close to what Masterpass has done, right, with their product. It's just going to take a long time. And it's not going to be worth the effort and they may not even have the technology, right? The know-how to kind of get it done. Yeah.
Kristen.
There are a lot of answers to your question, and I think the one thing the largest merchants, right, they want to embrace, right? They want to provide choice. They want to enable their customers to buy and convert a transaction every single time they want something, however they want to pay, right? So that's their going in starting point, but it's not as easy as that. They are, some of the arguments around Apple Pay. I think we all thought when Apple Pay launched, it was going to be panacea. It was going to completely turn the market, but Apple Pay went to market. As Apple tends to do without, a consensus vision, established across their partners, and they went to market with an economic model that a number of merchants are, really not happy about. The other wallets don't have a cost factor in here.
Is there a cost to merchants out there? Is that the issue?
To issuers, but I think if they could set that for issuers, because they do whatever they want ultimately for merchants, and not happy about that. But the biggest thing is that anxiety about that what does happen to the data. So there's an Apple Wallet, there's Samsung, there's Google, there's Visa Checkout, there's Mastercard. But what if one day there is an Amazon wallet, and all of a sudden through that Amazon wallet, Amazon gets all of the access to the data of what people are buying in my store, and we've all read the stories now. Amazon has fundamentally now established a private label business with the knowledge of what are the primary, which is the best dog food that's selling, and which are the best diapers, and
Putting out of business those companies.
And 5% cash back.
And
By the way, they copied that from the other Seattle retailer, Costco, with Kirkland Signature. They did exactly the same thing 20 years ago.
But they did it all online. Right, so they've taken the data that they've gathered from the merchants that sell across their site, and in turn turned around and against them. So the Walmarts and the Targets and everybody else in the world are going to have a nervousness around that.
And an extension of that is that's one reason why some of the big retailers have not turned on NFC for payments, because they're afraid if they do that, then a competitor's wallet could be used at their store, and that could allow data, just exactly what Laura was talking about. So
actually, a real world example. It doesn't have anything to do with NFC, but Alipay in China, they had something where similar to Samsung Pay, where they had points in the wallet for using Alipay. Then they said, okay, if you're buying a lot of, paper towels, we're going to give you a coupon to go over here. And that's exactly what Walmart is worried about.
Okay.
Looking at the quote, the next 100 years re-urbanizing. Re-urbanizing, urban areas mean there are neighborhoods. Neighborhoods imply there are going to be local stores. I'm in a neighborhood right now where there are 62 boarded up stores. A lot of that's being driven out by high rents. But these stores are not able to compete. Now, you talked about keeping the big stores. You can see by empty malls, it's really important. But do you have solutions that work beyond, say, the chains that come into the neighborhood? Like
what do we think they might be, whether they have them or not? Because
but do you have anything that salvages the smaller merchant?
And that's actually a lot of what we're doing at B-Promo. So we're taking this notion of a card-linked offer that I talked about earlier. Again, the connection of the identity of a consumer with payment credentials, and rather than having a separate loyalty tag or identifier, having the payment vehicle provide the dual function of identifying the consumer to the merchant while also accomplishing the payment transaction. By putting those two together, you enable a small or mid-sized retailer to offer that degree of customer touch that, in the mind of the consumer, can help justify a price premium. So today, the reality for many local merchants is that their competitive advantage is driven mostly, if not entirely, around location. I live in the apartment upstairs. I can pop down to the corner retailer and pick up XYZ in the next 15 minutes and be back home using my device. That was great in the era of mail order. In the era now of 1 to 2 hour online delivery, that advantage goes completely away. So the question becomes for the smaller mid-sized merchant, if I can't any longer compete on being able to service my customer quickly because Amazon can have a delivery van here as quickly as somebody can walk down from the 10th floor down into my store, then what else can I deliver from a value standpoint to that consumer that's going to make it worthwhile for them to come make those trek down the 10 flights of their walk up to come see me, as opposed to just keying it on their smartphone and ordering it from Amazon. And what we found at B-Promos is there is, and Laura alluded to this earlier, there's a strong desire on the part of consumers to shop locally. But what there isn't a desire to do is to pay the premium to shop locally, but not have a superior customer experience. So what we have found is that small merchants are increasingly looking to information-based solutions that can help them deliver more value to that customer. And by more value, I don't necessarily mean a discount. I mean the ability to know that customer's preferences when they walk in the door, the ability to have a perhaps customized assortment or a customized menu item that's frequently ordered by that customer available at the ready. There's a major Connecticut-based quick serve restaurant that is attempting to move into the digital world. And one of the ways they're thinking about doing that is by actually having customers who walk in the door of their shops log in with their email address before they place an order behind the counter. And in fact, in that scenario, the whole counter goes away. They simply log in the store at a kiosk, they place their order, it's highly customized to their needs, they get exactly what they want.
Is that working?
Don't believe it's working as well, at least in theory, as was expected, because the reality is customers are not going to walk into a bricks and mortar restaurant and key in an email address as though they were shopping online.
But they have that at LaGuardia, at one of those hamburger places, right? Pat LaFrida?
They do, and because we do a lot with that, we've actually put a number of programs in market recently. We've taken it one step further. We're doing a lot of work with AI and AR and both machine learning and virtual automated. We recently put programs in market using chatbots with Cheesecake Factory and with Subway and a number of other folks, where by using your phone, we actually, there's all dialogue that comes up, and it is linked to geolocation. So they know when you are near a restaurant, or even when you're in proximity of 3 restaurants, in the case of Subway, or like 2 or 3 around. You go out at lunchtime, you are hungry, you want your sandwich, it actually starts an entire running dialogue. Oh, you're back again, have you been there before? I mean, build up a knowledge base, do you want the whole lunch today, with the sub, the ham and cheese, or the Italian, or, meatballs, which one do you want, or do you want chips with that, do you want, a Coke with that as well? Which store are you closest to? Do you want the one on 10th Street, or do you want the one on 14th Street, sort of way you're going to? And you pay for it in Mastercard. Sorry to say that.
I knew that was coming.
No, but I mean,
and so then your lunch is there and arrived, ready for you to just pick up. You don't ever have to get it.
But I'll tell you, the challenge we see with that is that
these guys know each other, so just.
if you're
full disclosure, he was my boss. I worked for him.
But she was actually my boss while she worked for me. So
I think we're getting some history here.
Laura is very skilled. So we believe that obviously the holy grail for a merchant would be if you offer a bricks and mortar or an omni-channel experience to have a customer download your app so that you can deliver the type of geo-targeted experience or beacon-based experience that has just been described here. The reality is, though, if you look at the penetration rates of Tier 1 and Tier 2 retailers, in terms of the number of their consumers who have actually downloaded and installed their smartphone apps outside of Starbucks and Target, it's pretty negligible. Even for Walmart, even for players that have made a strong push in that area, like a Dunkin' Donuts, a Subway, a McDonald's, all across the QSR space, it's really, really small. So the challenge in our mind becomes, it'd be great if you could deliver that experience, but that may get you penetration into 1%, and maybe that 1% represents 10% or 5% of your best customers if you believe that 20% of your customers account for 80% of your volume or profitability. The challenge becomes, how do you then have as close a proxy to that intimate experience you get from having the consumer download your app if they haven't actually downloaded your app? And so we believe that one of the proxies for that is actually using that payment card credential, that when I show up at the restaurant, and even perhaps if I swipe my card before I order, I've authenticated myself to the system. I know I'm going to pay at the end anyway, but then the kiosk or whatever the merchant may have that has my preferences, my favorites, whatnot, can present those options to me quickly, but I didn't have to key in an email address. I didn't have to download an app, and I didn't have to go out of my way to leverage the digital experience.
Let's go back a bit.
How do you onboard sort of small merchants to your sort of offering, and then how would consumers know about it?
No, that's a great question. So
that's sort of like,
in our case, it'd be promos with our enterprise clients. We work with them directly. For our small and mid-sized clients, we actually sell through the merchant services provider channel. So we have our ISO, acquirer, and merchant processor channels. Exactly, because it's so closely associated with the payment. And in our model, we integrate with the payment terminal itself. So the Verifone, the Ingenicos, the Paxes. Because of that integration, it's going to touch the payment process anyway, so we really need the support of the merchant services processor to do that for us. But once we do that, it opens an incredible realm for us, because then not only can we help our merchants with data and analytics about customers who they know, we can help them equally with customers that they don't know, because we're capturing all of the data across all those customers regardless.
The woman in red.
I'm a huge fan of card-linked offers, because I think the traditional model of giving points or 2% cash back on credit cards is broken model. It's going to die eventually. But it's very confusing. And being a payments nerd, I try everything. I have plenty. I have this. I have that. Sure. But it's very confusing. So I never know. Like I get all these emails that say you should get this with your American Airlines. It's just overwhelming. I can't keep track of it all. So how are we going to solve that problem?
No, that's definitely a problem, and there's a fair amount of gaming around card-linked offers. So I know our CEO prides himself on being able to redeem the same card-linked offer from the same merchant across 2 or 3 different offer networks, and essentially end up, instead of a save 10 or 15% offer, he gets 45%
That's
back.
really not what you're supposed to do.
That's obviously not what you're supposed to do. That's certainly one of the problems.
He's the CEO.
He is. You know, we are a startup. We've been around for 7 or 8 years, so we do have some creative financing as part of our corporate strategy. Our meal expenses have never been a problem when we look at our T&E
because they're all redeemed with rewards, right?
Exactly. So, you know, communication to the consumer is really paramount. And so one of the tactics that we have taken is, again, when a consumer swipes their card at a point of sale terminal, at a payment terminal with one of our affiliated merchants, we take the opportunity to talk to them in real time. We message them through the payment terminal screen if it's consumer facing. We message them through the receipt once the receipt has printed, and we message them again if they've opted in through either SMS or email. And what we'll do is we'll put periodic reminders in their inboxes about offers that may be available to them that they haven't redeemed. We'll put a monthly statement summarizing loyalty program points that they've earned for our customers that are running loyalty. In our mind, it's really about continuous customer engagement. And like I said earlier, the most ideal way to do that is through an app. If you have the app, then you're golden because you can notify the consumer directly through the app. But again, at least for most small and mid-sized businesses, you're not going to be able to get your consumer to do that.
But what's the name of your thing? Can we all enroll in it?
What's that?
What's the name of your network?
She does try everything.
So our network is called Be Loyalty.
I mean, you've had lots of going on here, and you've been both in retail and you think about data. How would you think about this, Ozgur? Just some of the comments that have been made thus far, because a lot of it has to do with there's got to be some sort of opt-in there or not to use your program.
For our there is an opt-in. The consumers do have to opt in one time before they join our network. But in that opt-in, we collect their permissions to collect that data on an ongoing basis across multiple merchants, and we do the same on the merchant side as well. So there always is an opt-in. We may take some liberties in how broadly we apply it.
Okay, one question on particular Ozgur, because I think there's 2 things we're talking about here: the app basis and a non-app basis, and you need to have some sort of first agreement, obviously, with that information about the customer to make it work. Go ahead.
So let me just answer that. So
go ahead.
In our solution, we actually collect that opt-in because we're integrated with the merchant's payment terminal directly at the payment terminal. So we'll display to them terms and conditions and our binders and disclosures.
Whenever I hear integration, I want to ask how hard it is, but that's another question. So please, question in the back.
Yeah, a better question. I think the critical thing is who. I mean, it all boils down to what does a merchant own and what do you guys own? If you talk about that.
Certainly. So for our enterprise solutions, generally our merchant customers own the data. For our SMB solutions, we own the data, but make it available to our merchants for things like offer campaigns and promotions. And what we found is that for large enterprises, they want to be able to own that data so that they can slice and dice it and then act on it outside of our card-linked offer ecosystem. But for smaller merchants, they're really just looking for business results. They're not as concerned about data ownership issues per se. They're concerned about how do I get a message or an offer or some communication out to a customer who has been a frequent participant at my store so that I can bring them back in. So in that small and medium-sized business segment space, issues around ownership are subordinated to the desire to drive business and bring customers back, and who really owns the data at the end of the day is a secondary concern.
Laura's got a point to make, and then I have a question to Ozgur, because Ozgur doesn't represent a particular payment product or anything in that space, but more looks at the data. So let's get Laura and then go back to Ozgur.
Yeah, so I'm going to argue with Joseph's last statement.
Oh boy. I was hoping this
won't be the first time.
So what we Mastercard we're writing a new world of how payments transact and how payments interact and how payments work across the ecosystem, across the customer, across the merchant, across the acquirer, across the issuer, and the new payments facilitators, the new wallets, all of the new players in the ecosystem. What we've realized is that our rules have not kept pace with what technology has enabled. And as the world goes digital and wallets are proliferating and out there, and new payment facilitators and new players are getting into the payment space, whether it's Square, whether it's Apple, or whether it's Samsung, or whoever might be, either a token requester or a wallet operator. All of those questions were really seriously important, and the rules and the understanding of who owns the data, who has access to the data, what can the data be used for when you do have access for it. We were getting very much into very gray area. And, when you're in gray space and the rules are incredibly prescriptive, people are going to take advantage and they're going to find loopholes. So the way we at Mastercard have dealt with that is, one, we have taken a step back and we've spent the last better part of it, really the last 2 years, going forward with relooking at our 800-page rules book.
I'm just going to ask you about that. So they're going to get smaller?
So we are rewriting our rules to be current, and that is something that's ongoing. But in addition to that, we very, very specifically established a set of DW, the digital wallet operator rules, and we have established and put out to market a neat set of rules governing who can be a digital wallet operator, what are your responsibilities when you are a digital wallet operator, what can you do with the data, and if you are allowed to use that data just to facilitate the transaction and nothing more. And if you want to be able to communicate to the customer that does a wallet transaction through you, that customer must have an opt-in on the T's and C's.
With you.
It can't be an opt-out option. It actually must be an opt-in. And we've spent millions of hours with our lawyers. We push back, we argue, and we're absolutely.
You got a lot of lawyers.
And we do. But what we're trying to establish, is a unified playing field where there is.
I'm actually going to download and look at that because that's where things are going. Right. So you've heard people from different perspectives talking about it. You're kind of in the middle because you basically give advice and help people with it. I'd love to hear your comments as you run both the platform.
So one thing is obviously kind of looking at it more from a merchant perspective, or also sort of being part of the commerce company. I think I would advocate, as hard as it is to get consumers to download apps are critical. Right, and because they're not just facilitating the payment process, but they're also great tools to build loyalty with the end consumers. And I think there are examples of companies that have done a good job in that area, right? But
Starbucks.
It's good.
Yeah, well, let's emphasize. Starbucks is the poster child for everything.
Right. But I think the mistake that a lot of the merchants make is like they kind of built the app and they expected a lot of the consumers to go and download the app, right? But the reality is, they need to define that value proposition, right? Why someone should actually go and download the app on their mobile phone and start using it. And what I kind of see a lot of the merchants and a lot of the retailers do is they build it, they put it out there, and they think people are going to just download it on their own. Right?
They put a little sign at the point of sale that says download our new app.
Yeah, and so I think that's one critical thing, because then once they hit the app, it really opens up a lot of opportunities to kind of connect the digital with the physical world, and especially with some of the technologies like beacons that a lot of the physical kind of retailers put in their stores, they can track the customer, right? And because one of the challenges is sort of, we talk about this omni-channel journeys, right? That start in digital and then offline or vice versa. You have to be able to track the customer. You have to be able to see where sort of the journey starts and kind of the steps that consumer actually goes through until they buy the product. And the apps are really great tools to do that, right? So, my role perspective here is that, from a retailer perspective, from a merchant perspective, provide the value proposition to the consumer, right? So that they can download the app, and then also provide the engagement tools so that they can keep using it, right? To pay, to engage with the brand, or take advantage of promotions and a lot of different things.
So that brings up an interesting question, because there's lots of talk about app fatigue and too many apps. And this is not a random sample, obviously, but how many apps do you regularly use for commerce right now? I mean, more than 2. No, and raise your hands. It was more than 2. Okay, more than 4?
No.
More than 6. Okay, so it really drops off after a while. Can you see, a value prop that would get you to use another one? I mean, what would be the criteria that would get you, other than you?
Well, I started using the ExxonMobil one because I try everything. But,
yeah, we told us that.
Yeah, but you pull into the gas station, you fire up the app, you authorize the pump, which would be great if it's raining, you don't have to get out of the car. And then you pay with Apple Pay, then you get out of the car.
Or maybe Mastercard.
Or Mastercard. It could be Mastercard and Apple Pay. And then you get out of the car and you fill. So I thought that was pretty cool. And
that got you to download it for the convenience.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also for plenty points.
Yeah, though I heard Amex. Did anyone hear Amex is talking about exiting plenty? No, I heard a buzz about that, but it could be wrong.
Macy's, I heard it.
Well, AT&T.
No, AT&T is. AT&T is.
I mean, we're actually doing a program at the end of November about how you can actually boost up app use and mobile wallet. And one piece of that, of course, is going to be research. But that's a pitch. So, Tay, I know you're a Luddite, but
yeah,
a Luddite.
Proudly.
Until a few months ago, I only had a semi-intelligent phone. How do you matrix getting your card to the front of the wallet and your app to the front of the wallet? Are they the same thing? We're talking about, you have all the co-branded cards.
Well, an app's going to be specific generally to a retailer, so you're only going to use it when you're at that retailer. Fair statement?
Well, you could displace Apple Pay with Masterpass, for example.
Or even more dangerously, as Walmart has attempted to do with their app, displace cards with ACH. Mm-hmm. Because if the wallet's at the front of the app, then presumably I, as the consumer, are indifferent to how that payment is being settled, and I, as the merchant, can choose between 7 cents a transaction or 295 basis points.
But that's a tough one. I mean, I talked to the guy who used to run MCX, which I wrote a piece years ago saying don't count MCX out. He said he couldn't even get his wife to attach her DDA account to it, and then he was the CEO. Yeah. So I just finished working for a European company where it's much more accepted to debit your account directly.
Right, but there is much broader acceptance.
So I know. I mean, Amazon's pitching 2% off if you connect your bank DDA account to their whatever it's called, one of the many plethora of devices there. But I just don't know what kind of uptake, because it's just tough. PayPal kind of coerced you into doing it. Mm-hmm. But when PayPal did it, but when PayPal did it, they were the only way to pay online.
Right. I think part of it's the enrollment problem. So.
Tell me.
Enrollment of ACH with micro deposits.
That is ugly to get through. Yeah. Well, Deb was on the Faster Payments Task Force, so she's running an event.
It's going to be seamless to enroll.
Okay, so there's a whole other angle, and there's going to be an NYPAY event on that in mid-November. But let's see, jumping back to the app. It sounds like we're talking that apps are the best way to get engagement. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, so the one, at least from a retailer perspective, they're definitely drivers of engagement, right? And even some of the analysis that we did and some of the numbers that we looked at, there's a high degree of correlation between a value of a customer and their app download behavior, right? Because it just really becomes top of mind for a customer, especially the experience becomes a lot smoother, a lot less frictionless, and that really drives a lot more conversion, a lot more engagement, right? The other piece with the apps, and I kind of see some of the retailers do that very effectively, is you have the ability to send push notifications to the customer, right? Obviously, the customer has to opt in for that, right? But then it becomes another channel that really goes directly to the customer and allows them to see promotions, see the different offers and things that would really create value, and that also drives a lot of engagement.
So I would say a couple of different things, and the utilization of that really varies, right? You've already said, who uses 2, who uses 4. there's sort of a tipping point beyond which you don't want another app on your phone, right? You don't want that cluttered screen top. You don't use it. It's taking storage space. You can't take another photograph because your storage is all eaten up because you put Pandora and Spotify on, and now you can't do anything. And
that's when you get 250 gig phone. $1,500.
So, there's a fundamental difference between an app from what we would describe as an everyday retailer, your Starbucks or your Dunkin' Donuts or your grocery store or Exxon, that you are going to visit, whether it's every week or, at least 3 or 4 times a month versus, Macy's, which maybe you go to 2 or 3 times a year, or Nordstrom. We run into a problem all the time with the airlines, right? The airline apps have really, I think, dramatically improved in their utility for all of us. We're all using the app to check in. We're all, the app is sending push notifications while we're in the cars on the way to the airport that your date has changed, your flight has changed, your flight's canceled, you're no longer going to Miami, sorry, maybe tomorrow we can get you there. But outside of the actual day that you travel, when do you turn on your American app or your Delta app, or when do you look at it, right? And they all want you to use it to make other transactions, to book more with them, to do, and they can't figure out what it takes to actually get you to engage with them to a greater degree, so that they know more about you and can increase your utilization of their airline. Because when you interact with them is on the day of travel, the day leading up to travel, or the week you booked it, or whatever it is. So everybody's trying to figure that out. So there's a fundamental difference between an everyday spend merchant and the real ability to drive top of wallet behavior, or top of that behavior, whatever we're calling it, and a merchant that you are an infrequent user of.
Well, and that's kind of the observation I've always had, or mine's change, but that the only reason you use an app is for situational specific, like checking in. I just walked down the street and checked into my flight, which is brilliant. But that's all I use it for. But they should be happy enough because at least they're seeing what I'm doing, and it's listening to cost and me calling and they're doing something else. Or a place that you do regularly, so QSRs, quick service restaurants, or things like that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, sometimes I think, and I don't know if Macy's is here, I try to invite them, but is anyone Macy's here? Okay, but I mean, why would I download the app if I go there 3 times a year? So what do they do to bridge that gap? That's why your first example I thought was an interesting one of the kind of front end stores with interactive, something like that, completely apart from using an app all the time on your phone. And so there's that question. And then there's a question that Tay raised earlier, just about the smaller stores and what happens then, and even a rural versus urban question. But
yeah, and something that was in my when Chris was speaking earlier, and you bring up that our pilot example. We know very well, right? Well,
I just thought it was cool. It wasn't just that you're here.
I'm
going to go down and look at it.
It's very, very cool. And literally, I encourage you all to go down and see.
It might be a 5-year, 10-year period.
Really, but each and every one of those mirrors is getting expensive. Right? So Target can't put one in every fitting room, right? Or even Neiman Marcus can't put one in every fitting room, even the highest end luxury. Somebody like Rebecca Minkoff, who has, a 500 square foot standing store in 10 locations, could afford to do it, and, margins of luxury space. But this is all new, really cool, really interesting stuff. And we know, that's not going to take off right now, but what we're all trying to do is figure out how do you reimagine the experience and what can technology enable. And as we all, play around with, what innovation and technology can do today, we'll get to how to scale it in a cost-effective way that, can be right for the masses to take on. We've got to start someplace, right? We've got to figure out what the technology can enable.
Sandy from C2G.
So the way we interact with apps, we meaning and your people.
What'd you say?
Grown-ups, yeah. And the way millennials interact with apps are very different, psychologically, as well as physically. Because we just talked about, how many people use 2 and 4. And I look at my niece's phone, she has like 50 things up there. And she uses all of them. So we're talking at a different level that they don't even think about, right? How do you generationally, and they're very engaged, they're the forever connected society. And this is all they use. Yeah. They don't use a laptop anymore. So how do you replicate what they're doing? And they're finding apps that we don't even know about. I don't even know about some of that stuff. But they have the ability to find apps to do the things that they need to do and to engage themselves. How do you replicate that?
So we've been very purposeful and very specific. One, we hire millennials. We have fundamentally changed the ratio of our age demographics in our company around the world. Hiring people who have been raised with technology in a different way that the rest of us have. We've never had a bank account. We've never seen a reason to go into a bank branch. I mean, everything I do with my kids at college is through Venmo. I pay him, he pays his roommate, he pays the landlord, the security deposit comes back split between 5 people. I get my $500 back at the end of the day, and I'm totally happy. I have no real interest in knowing 16 people I traverse through on his phone. But that's one thing that we do. The second thing that we did 6 or 7 years ago, which has been a really valuable commodity for us, is we started a program. Well, 7 years ago, we built Mastercard Labs and our innovation lab, which is where we innovate and how we trial things, in a fast scale and get out and, commercialize things outside of the bureaucracy that is the larger global organization. But within Mastercard Labs, we also created something called StartPath. And StartPath is a global program that we go out around the globe and search for early funded startups that are either squarely in the payment space or tangentially around the payment space. Sometimes we make an investment, not always. We sort of mentor them, but we bring them in and we've created this organization where we then, network. We create opportunities for our big corporate customers, our large tier 1 customers around the globe, to meet these startups and we connect them. So that, that's all there is. We want to further the opportunity and see what new cool stuff is being built and is out there and facilitate it in a way that both our customers have access to it. And it's really been a valuable part of what we do.
Well, I want to thank you, Sandy, because you brought up one of the points that got erased somehow. I screwed up on my deck. Was age change? I think we had a question back there.
I was going to ask, we're talking retail, but when I see what's happening with retail, it means being replaced by brands. Retail was traditionally a breaker of brands. People have now started going directly to brands like Warby Parker or Harry's, which you would be buying direct in Walgreens or wherever, right? So how are you taking to that? Because the new consumer is using products as an extension of their personality. It's like sort of takes time to like. So brands are trying to do new stuff. Right now, there's an Amazon bookstore right on 24th and 56th. So Amazon seems to be coming back to brick and mortar. And Harry's has like right next to your Worcester Street store, they have a store. And same with Warby Parker. So new players which are very focused on used to call them casual pillars. Those are how do you think those are?
So, I think you brought up lots of really important concepts just in that question. And,
he asked very dense questions.
we started out in the beginning, or I started out in the beginning by saying, retail is not dead, brick and mortar is not dead. It has to reimagine itself. And so, what are the phases that we've all lived through, right? For one, the department store is dead. right? Nobody is taking the time to go to the, 70,000 square foot department store that has kids and men's and athletics and sporting goods and mattresses and furniture and cosmetics when they just need a pair of black pants, right? They're which is why the malls are dying, right? Because the major anchor stores, the old days of the Sears and the Pennies and Macy's anchoring and everybody coming to go to them and then walking through the mall to go see all the other little shops that make it up. That's not the way people are shopping. And what are some fundamentals? The world has changed. In essence, virtually every family now is a two-income working family. With kids, without kids, single or not, but nobody's home and around. There's no stay-at-home mom who has all day long to live in Westchester. But,
My too.
I don't know anything. But so the time that people have, right? The shopping on Sunday. If you don't have a store that's open on Sunday, you're getting water because people have Saturday and Sunday to shop. If you're not open past 7 p.m., the stores that are open from the 7 to 9 o'clock hour can get you after work. Otherwise, you're going to go home. And, we see the data, we see the numbers. Anybody that's, got small kids in the house, they are going online at 10 p.m. And that's when they're doing their shopping because they had dinner, they bathe the kids, they put them in bed, they have their glass of wine, and, then they're doing what they need to do.
That's what I call on-wine shopping.
That's a good point. That's good.
Consumer behavior has changed because the world has changed, the economy has changed, our available time has changed. How we can access things is more readily available in any way we want. So, is it a brand or is it, the way you can access what it is you want? You say people go to brands. I might argue with that. If you need a razor and you go to Amazon, you don't necessarily put in Gillette. You say I need a twin blade razor and what comes out for whatever it may be. Sometimes, there's a mix, right? Some people go directly for the brand and know what they want, and some people say I need a red dress.
Right. If you look at it allows people to select the brand. And when they shop for you, all the stores nearby you, and they select a store, and you pick a store which is right next to you, deliver in 20 minutes.
Right.
And you get your jeans in 20 minutes. Try it out and you're done. It's almost that. So why would I have any loyalty to a retail store? I would have loyalty to what I use, right? In the same case, right? I might not select the red, but if it's Dollar Shave Club,
well, I think it depends on what you're buying too. It depends on if it's something that you do want to touch and feel. I was interested. Once a year we do something. I did something called an unconference, where the whole day is around conversations where the users. It's not any topic. It's all over transactions. But the participants say, "Here's what we want to talk about," and we have kind of curated discussions. And we had one on retail, and there was a guy who's only in his 30s who said he still, when he buys electronics, wants to go and touch and feel it, and I was surprised, but the world is like that. So there's all kinds of little micro segments that go into different things.
Yeah.
So
just a couple points related to that. So the one thing that I would say is brands are definitely more accessible, right? Because you can, as a consumer, you can go directly to the brand, right?
They can speak directly to you.
Right. But the reality.
That's what I believe in.
The issue though is it really depends on the type of product, right? Type of purchase you're making, you're trying to make, right? So if you're buying sort of like a commodity type product, right? So I'll go to Amazon because they offer kind of the one-stop shop. You can go in there, fill your basket and kind of pay and really get done fast, right? Versus if you're buying, a high-end, bicycle or electronics, you may want to actually go to the specialty store and really do your research, read all the reviews and so forth, and it's a different experience, right?
So the New York Times took water companies from
Wirecutter.
Yeah, water for $30 million. Their reviews for a mop. Right? A mop is probably like a commodity. Their review for a mop, and you can click on the link, it takes you to Amazon, probably there's a New York Times and the create revenue. But so people are becoming so review driven. It's almost like the retail aggregator is starting becoming unimportant. That's why somebody mentioned Amazon using their own private label. That's like the way for them to repay off this remediation they are facing by people who are going to use it, certainly for a small, I don't know, certainly.
Right.
Somebody does.
Yeah.
We got a question over here from this gentleman.
Yeah, I have a question. I saw research that says that over 50% of all searches by the year 2020 will be voice.
Yeah.
So speaking of millennials, right? And so how, Laura also talked about AI and having an interaction. So it's totally different than just saying, barbecue Dallas. So what's the best barbecue by me or whatever. How do you see how are online retailers organized at the moment? And then eventually we'll be paying online by voice.
Yeah, so a couple points there. One is for an e-commerce site, search is probably the most important tool, right? So typically the visitors that do a search on an e-commerce site, they convert at the highest rate. They convert, at least 56% higher than people that are browsing, right? Because they can find what they're looking for, they go, they buy it, and then they pay, and they're done with the transaction. So very important on a site. So a couple of things happening there, right? So one is, you can actually now search on an e-commerce site by putting an expression similar to what you can use on Google, right? Because in the old days, you had to kind of put in the brand and exactly the brand. That's how you kind of got the results that you're looking for. But versus now, you can describe what you're looking for, and you get relevant results. Obviously, Amazon is kind of leading the path there. But so you kind of get that Google type experience. There's a reason why if you look at all the product searches that are being done in the US, majority of them are actually being done on Amazon now, and not Google, right? So, and the driver for that was really that the sophistication of the search process. The one thing that I would also add about this whole voice piece, though, is it's kind of also related to the comments that Sandra was making about millennials, right? So I see it in my son, my 9-year-old, when he wants to go and check the scores of the latest Baltimore Orioles game. He uses voice, right, on Google, versus I don't do that. Like my behavior.
He's done checking now.
Right. That's right. He used to do that, but I think so you kind of see the behavior change of the digitally native consumers that are actually go in and interact with that search engine using voice versus actually typing it. What that really means for retailers, for e-commerce sites, is one, that search function is so critical, right? I mean, as a retailer, if I'm going to spend my time on anything on the site, I would spend the majority of my time on really building the search engine, making sure that it's really spitting out and producing the relevant results. And the other thing is the voice search, but I would take it one step further. You can actually do search based on your camera now, right? So it's available on Amazon. It's available actually. We implemented it on my previous company. So you could literally hold the camera to an object, and that goes and really pulls the item from the catalog and displays the results, right? And ultimately, what that really ties to is that frictionless customer experience, right? Because you're in a store, you're kind of out and about. And you don't really want to go and type the name of the object, right? So you want to really be able to find that object very quickly, and that's sort of where the voice-based and the visual search comes into play.
So you could see something on the street that was interesting to you, just someone was wearing it or something was sitting there. You could point your phone at it, and it would do a search for where it's available and price.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So that's the visual search, right, is available, right? So you could kind of argue how well it works, right? So it's probably not perfect, but reality is there's a number of companies and technologies available today that provide that service that an e-commerce company actually implements. and be able to really provide that service to their consumers so that they can just take a picture of anything that they're looking for and be able to find it in the catalog.
And to go back to just your payment question as well, obviously biometrics are so much, part of the authentication process. And, clearly, and Apple came out, with the thumbprint authentication for the phone, and that has continued on from a payments perspective. We, whether, I don't know if you've heard of Selfie Pay, which had a different name, and the journalists, I think, sort of the Kardashians jumped in, but to use your face recognition and the blink of an eye, and we are experimenting with a whole host of things from your pulse rate and your heart monitor, and what are those things that are completely personal to you, so that passwords can go by the way.
So basically, if your pulse gets faster when you look at something, it says hi. Okay. There's two questions here, Annette and then Rod.
So you started to touch on my question actually, which is in the aftermath of the security breach that just happened, and thinking about
yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
And thinking about really and each one of us probably, the data knows everything about what we're doing, right? All these touch points and mirrors, how do we overlap the security and what is really the face of the consumer? Because I can tell you, Sandy's experience, my kids have no fear about security. They're not thinking about it. They're just downloading information. They don't even think about security. Where I'm like, ooh, do you want to be putting that in? And they're like, yeah, of course. What do you mean? So I'm just curious, how we overlay that onto this conversation.
So, so what I would say to that is that the Equifax breach scared us all, right? It terrifies all of us, and everyone in this room. I personally haven't gone to check myself. I think because I don't want to know. What would I do?
Did you freeze your bureaus?
I did.
I did. 2 million people have.
Equifax doesn't know. You can put any name in and it tells you.
Yeah, you're probably.
You can put Mr. Mixel pics from Superman in there and it will tell you your data may have been breached.
Let's go back to Annette's question.
Everything about what we are doing is to ensure the safety and security of the payment transaction. From what we do, we can't go beyond into all of your personal data and your employee records and your payroll and your social security number. From a payments perspective, and that's really where tokenization came in, right? So we started in the card-present environment, and the entire rest of the world had migrated to EMV, with the exception of the U.S. And for all of the reasons that we all know why it was so challenging to get this market, build a business case behind it. But if we all look at it, I think we all really know what was it that got the market here was the target, right? Which at the time was the biggest thing out
Which
there.
was ironic because it had nothing to do with
And everybody
EMV.
basically said, holy cow, we can't be the next one on the other end of that, reputation nightmare fiasco. So we've got to go there. And it pushed the market, and once, I think we're really proud of. I know everybody thinks it's a nightmare, but in a very short window of time compared with global EMV migrations, we're 45% there right now. We see over 40% chip-on-chip transactions today. So we're getting there. 65% is what we see as the real tipping point. 65% chip-enabled terminals and chip transactions.
You got to watch the tape of our EMV meetup last year.
I will.
Did you?
But I haven't seen it. But sure enough, the card-present environment, is only going to send the fraudsters to a card-not-present environment, right? And so that's where tokenization is born. Right? What do we do as the next step to ensure that we, close every hole in the dike, and to the greatest extent that we can. And it's not easy. None of this stuff is easy. It's really complicated.
Breaches will never stop. So the question is making sure the data is there. They'll always happen because the guys doing it have all the time in the world, and the payoff is so great when they get there, much more than any of us do. The question is how do you make sure what's inside once they break in is a little better. Rod had a question, I think.
Yeah, just we talk a lot about the
some stuff that's happening down the road, interesting ideas. But Scan and Go is occurring in supermarkets today. Sam's Club is up and live.
Absolutely.
Aho, at least from Stop and Shop, has said it's up and live. I tested it. It doesn't work, but I'm sure over time it'll work. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the benefits are?
Yeah, so, and Sam's and Walmart both will tell you that they think Scan and Go is one of the, most incredible creations that they put out in the market. It's obviously, between Walmart and Scan and Go. And ironically, one of the things, and I don't know if I'm interested to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, as they built the two, because obviously they're organizations, a single organization, but they've got, they are two separate companies. They didn't build them to be compatible. They're picking themselves right now because Walmart Pay can't be used in Sam's. And anyway, they're trying to work all that out.
It's interesting to see the standards within the same organization, right? Let alone across the industry.
Because we build in silos, right? We each think of what our need is and what our business model is, and what's the ship? It's like that, somewhere along the line. But so, what we see, and you're 100% right, is everybody's trying to figure out that there are myriad options, right? Pick up, click online, pick up in store, ship to house, ship to store, ship. So, and I'll speak to, so much of it, there are a number of things inherent, right? What's the most convenient? What is the logistics infrastructure that any merchant has? Do they have the distribution center? Do they have the warehouse? Do they have the delivery infrastructure in place? And Amazon is now looking to not only build new offices but expand their GCs around to be placed in position so that you can get it there. But the other is the cost structure, right? The cost of a card present transaction is less than the cost of a card not present transaction. And so what are the rules? So going back to what I was saying before about rewriting the rules, right? So if you've bought it online, if you go into store and pick it up, is it a card present transaction or a card not present transaction? Right? When does the transaction go through? But if you have to physically be there to pick it up, if the transaction's already closed because they don't pick it unless they've charged you for it, and you only give your ID to show, or your barcode or whatever it is, what is that transaction? Scan and Go very much is all part of that. How can we speed through the clubs, speed through the checkout process? How do we shorten the lines? How can we get you in and out as quickly as possible? But how can we leverage and maximize the infrastructure we have? So everybody out there in the marketplace is trialing new options, and for Sam's, they believe Scan and Go is an absolute winner.
How soon do you think the majority of supermarkets will have something like Scan and Go?
That's a good question. They're all really working hard to figure out what is the right thing for their particular organization, their customer mix, their geography, their footprint, and their share. And it really does differ. And what we see all the time is so many of them are still saddled with old POS systems. Right, and old logistics.
So narrow margin business.
It depends on those people who 5 and 10 years ago looked ahead and upgraded their point of sale system. And we've also got in that particular work there's been a lot of acquisitions, right, over time. And when you acquire 1 or 2 or 3 different brands and bring them all together, you've got disparate, non-unified systems on the back end, and it's very, very difficult to link an e-com system to a point-of-sale system, especially if you've got 2 or 3 different point-of-sale systems that don't speak to one another, and you've just had to upgrade your entire point-of-sale system to manage EMV, right? So they're capital expenses, and you've got to make the right decisions at the right time for your own business. So there's no one single answer to it, but it is exactly the question that everybody's working really hard to try to figure out.
That's a nice segue. We're getting so warm here. I started asking about what heat controllers, and we've gotten past 8. So why don't I do the summary question we always do? easy way to sum up is think about, we're talking about the next 100 years. We're not talking 100 years. Think 5 to 10 years. And think of the physical retail versus the e-com, kind of what you would think. Well, your position, starting over at Chris's, I can talk slowly and you can think about it. But no, let's just do the kind of, what do you think might it look like to 5 to 10 years from now, the brick and mortar versus that whole array?
I think, today there's a dichotomy in a lot of situations between traditional brick and mortar and e-commerce. Obviously, the movement towards omni-channel and the ability to start a transaction in one channel, finish it in the other, whether it's buy in store and pick up or order in the store, but they don't have my size, so they've got to deliver it to my home within 2 hours. We're going to see increase. Part of what I talked about earlier, that retailer value propositions are going to depend on being able to deliver some superiority in that customer experience, and I think you're going to see continued efforts for retailers to tie together those channels so that they can deliver that unified experience and command the extra value relative to what a consumer might otherwise do in going to Google or going to Amazon, just ordering the cheapest commodity item in that category and being done with it. So that would be my prediction. Look for more omni-channel convergence and retailers struggling to figure out how to glue those disparate channels, to Laura's point, together even more effectively.
Okay.
Yeah, so from my perspective, definitely a lot of growth in commerce, mobile commerce. So we're going to continue to see, increased penetration in mobile commerce, and this will become a more and more important tool for all the retailers, not just the ones that are pure play e-commerce companies, but it could also be ones that are on the channel, because ultimately this really will drive the purchase decision in the store, right? And in terms of being able to really provide that experience, the shopper experience, that will really lead to a sale, and a lot of them are going to have to put a lot more focus on the mobile device to make sure that they're really providing a seamless, frictionless experience to their consumers. But I would expect a lot more growth in the mobile commerce area.
So, Chris and Ozgur and Laura, does this lead to shuttering of a lot of physical stores? Or do they go away?
I mean, I think there's no doubt that the U.S. is overstored, and certainly if you look around most metropolitan areas, and I get to travel a good bit, there seems to be an endless supply of new commercial retail coming on the market. I'm not quite sure who's going to end up occupying all that space. And in fact, if you read the trade rags, especially in real estate, they're talking about converting old malls into doctors' offices or experience centers or whatnot. I think you will end up with fewer doors, but the turns that you have per door will be higher, and that'll help justify some of the investments in these types of capabilities, which to your point are CapEx and are not cheap.
Laura, you see it very closely.
Ozgur used 2 words that we use all the time. One is the experience, and the other is frictionless. So, it really is about consumer experience and what that is. And the other is about making the payment part of the transaction. Back in the old days, we used to go into stores to buy something. We went to merchant to buy something. Payment was simply what we did to effectuate that purchase or whatever it is. Now, so much more part of the journey, but we're moving towards, what's the ideal with the Uberization of payments. You don't think about it. You don't, if you're not asked, you don't have to. You have a think about it. You don't need to say yes or no. It just happens, and you walk out of the car, and it's done, and that's it. So.
And I can even say that now for a while I was boycotting Uber because of Travis, but now that it's gone, I can say Uberization. We're not gone, but it's there. Guys, there's still drinks. We've got some time to hang out. I want to thank very, very much the panel for this wonderful discussion. It could go many directions. What does tokenization mean for personal identification? You could go directions of what does this mean for rural America when all the stores go away and the work goes away. That's a whole nother set of it. We try to have these quite regularly, at least once a month for NYPAY. If you signed up tonight, I think you've opted into our mailing list, but we won't spam you. So please feel free to stop by, suggest topics you might be interested in, because this is a nice way to spend not too much time and come away, I hope, having learned something.
Next one, November 14th.
November 14th, faster payments. The woman in red is one right away. And this gentleman back here, Ron. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Chris. Feel free to chat at that time with more families. It's not possible.